Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the new iMac with a stunning Retina 5K display. So this is joining the existing lineup of the 21.5-inch and 27-inch iMacs, which are carried over unchanged. Now for the most part, the Retina iMac is identical to the existing non-Retina 27-inch iMac, but adds a 5K display and upgraded internal specs. Now before we get to the specs and what makes this display so stunning, let's get it out of the box so we can take a close look around. Now if you order your iMac from Apple, it ships in a cushioned trapezoidal box identical in shape to the iMac's box. It even opens the same way, folding forward for easy accessibility, so you don't have to strain to pull it out of the box. Now once again, we have that distinctive trapezoidal box, which makes the packaging much more stable for transport. Now the packaging has been updated with the artwork for OS X Yosemite, which just went public last week. Apple also makes this really easy to open once again, so all you have to do is slice the tape and let the front of the box open up, which reveals a styrofoam cocooned iMac. Now tucked in the top is our accessory box containing our wireless Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. First up is the multi-touch Magic Mouse, which is carried over unchanged. Now, of course, if you do a custom order, you could get a Magic Trackpad instead. Now, this comes pre-installed with non-rechargeable batteries, and the first thing we'll need to do here is to switch it on so the mouse is ready to pair to the iMac when it boots up for the first time. Next up is the Bluetooth keyboard, which is very familiar territory here with that aluminum unibody design and the chiclet-style keyboard. Now, on either side, we'll find a power button, as well as the battery compartment, which can be opened with a coin when it's time to replace the batteries. But once again, these come pre-installed with two AA's. We still have all of our familiar Apple keyboard functions at the top, such as controlling screen brightness, mission control, launcher, and media controls. Now below that, we'll find our literature packet, which includes a quick start guide, warranty information, Apple stickers, and an Apple-branded microfiber cleaning cloth for that glass display. The quick start guide covers the basic setup and installation information, as well as highlighting some of its major software features on OS X Yosemite. Now it's probably best to do this on the floor instead of on a table like I'm doing here, but you can see our iMac is completely cushioned in styrofoam segments, which makes them easy to take apart. Now behind the packaging, we'll find our detached power cord just kind of hanging around, so we're going to connect this later. Now the next thing I need to do is remove the styrofoam envelope protecting the iMac. Now to free it, just peel the tabs at the back of the iMac, free them from behind the stand, and just pull up. Next up, we have lots of clear plastic covering the glass of the iMac and the user-accessible RAM slots, which are thankfully still here. Next, we can start peeling the plastic off from the sides of the iMac so we can pull this off in one piece. Next up is the plastic covering the pedestal, and as you might have noticed, the hinge is still using a spring to help hold up the heavier 27-inch iMac. Now the chassis of the iMac is again identical to the 27-inch design they debuted back in 2012, so same dimensions and all with that aluminum unibody design. We still have that razor-thin 5mm edge that curves toward the center to create the illusion of a super thin display while giving space for the components inside. The effect is still really attractive here. Now at the bottom, once again, we'll find the chin with the Apple logo. Now like before, the chin houses the air vents and down-facing stereo speaker grills, which in this case are milled into the edge of the bezel, and again, that bezel is also razor thin. I've always really liked these speakers in the 27-inch iMac, and I use them regularly thanks to the deep bass response and clear dynamic range. I'll have a sample later in this video so you can judge for yourself. Now on the top of the display, we'll find a FaceTime HD camera along with an ambient light sensor and LED indicator. We'll also find a pair of dual microphones etched into the metal unibody at the top edge of the display, and just below that on the back side of the iMac. Now behind the iMac on the top, we'll find that glossy black plastic Apple logo that acts as an RF transparent window for Wi-Fi to pass through the metal chassis unaffected. And of course, we're running 802.11 AC in this computer. Now behind the pedestal's hinge, you'll find the chassis exhaust vent, the RAM door, the power port, and a Kensington lock at the very bottom. Now on the back of the iMac, we'll find all of the I/O ports in one location, including an SD-XE card slot, as well as a headphone jack, which also acts as an input for a microphone, and also acts as an optical audio output as well with the right adapter. We also have 4 USB 3.0 ports, 2 Thunderbolt 2 ports, and a Gigabit Ethernet port. Now on the opposite side, we'll find that concaved power button, so it's easy to feel for without having to see it. Now once again, this 27-inch iMac has user upgradable RAM, so we can pop off the back panel to install our own RAM sticks. Now concealed in the power port is a button to release that panel. You'll probably need something to push on the button to release it since it's so recessed. Now the panel pops off and is only held on with anti-vibration friction fittings along the side. Now inside that panel, you actually see some instructions on how to remove and install your own RAM. First step is to release the RAM carriage, which pops up when you spread the clips apart. Now I'm removing the existing 4 gig RAM sticks and replacing them with 8 gig sticks. So that'll bring me up to 32 gigs. And again, this is a lot cheaper than what Apple will charge. This is $270 for 32 gigs versus $600 for Apple's upgrade for 32 gigs. Now the installation is very easy. The slots are clearly defined and all you need to do is push them in firmly to seat them correctly. Once you're done with installation, we just need to push the carriage back down and reinstall the back panel. Now if you want to buy your own RAM upgrade kit, I'll post a link in the description below. Now our next step is to connect the power cable so we can power this on for the first time. Now, like my 2013 iMac, this iMac is the maxed out configuration, which gets me a Core i7 Haswell clocked at 4 GHz and an AMD Radeon R9 M295X with 4 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. This GPU also has the more modern Tonga architecture compared to the older standard GPU. I've also opted for the 3TB Fusion drive, although a 1TB Fusion drive is standard, and there are several SSD options up to 1TB. So if you want the ultimate speed, pick an SSD, but I preferred storage. The Fusion drive once again combines the speed of an SSD with the storage capacity of a hard disk drive, which intelligently loads frequently used content on the SSD for quicker access and read times. So OS X and the app load times are very quick. Now the big news here, however, is the display, which has a resolution of 5120 by 2880, which doubles the resolution of the old 27-inch iMac, which quadruples the number of pixels on the screen to 14.7 million. So we jump from 109 pixels per inch to 218 pixels per inch. Now, like the old iMac, this is an IPS LCD display which is optically bonded to the glass. The glass itself has an anti-reflective coating, although it's still a glossy panel. The screen seems to be equally as bright and colorful as the non-Retina iMac, but the clarity is simply stunning on the Retina 5K display. So if you're familiar with other Apple Retina displays, the experience here is very similar, but on a much larger scale, which makes it even more stunning. Now, if you visit the resolution options of the display, we can't select the native resolution. Instead, it scales the content for better clarity instead of more screen real estate, although you can select from a few scaling options to get a little more space on your display. Now, unfortunately, the 5K iMac does not support target display mode like the non-Retina iMac, so unfortunately, you can't use the iMac as a 5K external display for your Mac Pro or your MacBook. This is brought on by the limitations of Thunderbolt 2, which can't handle the resolution of 5K. This also explains why we did not get a 5K Thunderbolt display. Now, unfortunately, this will require updates to the Thunderbolt hardware, so no current Mac can support 5K externally. Now, you can connect an external display to the 5K iMac, such as a Thunderbolt display, or in my case, I'm using another iMac in target display mode, and it works seamlessly. It automatically scales the content as you drag and drop windows between the displays. Now, the great thing about a 5K instead of a 4K display is that you can actually preview a full 4K video project in the video editor, like Final Cut Pro, while still having room for the UI. If you look at a non-Retina iMac side by side with a project set to actual fit, you can see the full project on the Retina iMac, unlike the non-Retina, which will have to scale it down significantly. Now, the 4K video you're watching right now has been edited on the 5K iMac, and it worked flawlessly, with no signs of frame dropping, so I can scrub the timeline like you would with a non-Retina display, and it works perfectly. Overall, I'm really excited to finally have a display that allows me to fully preview and edit 4K while doing it flawlessly. So let's take a look at our benchmarking to get an idea of the relative performance of our machine. First up is Geekbench, which reveals a single-core score of 4438 and a multi-core score of 16407. That's up fairly significantly from the non-Retina iMac, which scored 3969 on the single core and 14960 on the multi-core score. Next is Cinebench to test our GPU performance, which delivers an OpenGL score of 105.4 frames per second versus the 87.94 frames per second on the GeForce 780 from last year, which also had 4 gigs of RAM. CPU is also up from 694 to 781. Now, in terms of disk performance, again, we have a Fusion drive, which is the same 3TB unit I had in last year's iMac, and performance is about the same here. Now, the Fusion drive can be kind of hard to gauge just because of the way it behaves. So when we're testing out disk speed, we're actually testing out the SSD portion of that drive, not the hard disk drive. So the write speed is about 300 to 350, and the read speed can max out over 700. So that's pretty decent. Now, if you want faster write speeds, you're going to want to take a look look at the SSD or the full SSD instead of the Fusion drive. So you'll see write speeds closer to the read speeds on the full SSD. My final test is a 4K export in Final Cut Pro of identical 2-minute and 20-second 4K video projects using the standard 4K compressor settings. Now the Retina iMac completed the export in 2 minutes and 3 seconds, while the non-Retina did it in 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Certainly a small gain here, but this magnifies depending on the size of your project, and as you know, I make really long videos. Now, as I promised, let's take a listen to those impressive internal speakers.
You might have to decide between seeing your children again and the future of the human race.
We'll find a way, but we always have.
So in the end, this iMac represents a monumental leap for desktop displays, and at a starting price of $24.99, it's a relative bargain on the market when you consider Dell is selling a 5K display for the same price, without a computer attached. And for me, this is the computer I've been waiting for since I began filming and editing in 4K this year. So from the display to the processing power, I'm extremely excited to use this for everything from browsing the web with pin-sharp text and images to editing my huge 4K video projects. So that's going to do for me in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.